Hello everyone, Mark Trout here from the Missouri Civil War Museum. Today we're going to film the first of a series of artifacts in the collection of the museum that relate to President Abraham Lincoln. Today's feature item will be one of President Lincoln's bronze life mask, originally sculpted by renowned artist Clark Mills and replicated in the 1970s by Lincoln scholar and artist Mr. Lloyd Ostendorf. Our mask here is mask number 7 of 15 that Lloyd Ostendorf had casted in the early parts of 1970s. We know this because in the fall issue of 1973 of the Lincoln Herald, it is the featured object on the cover of the publication, as well as an extensive article written by Lloyd Ostendorf himself describing the mask in great detail and how and why he fabricated these. Life and death masks were used to permanently cast the likeness of important figures. Historically, these masks were used to help artists accurately paint a portrait of the subject after death, as well as for display in libraries, museums, public places, and archives. They gave a realistic three-dimensional life-size view of the person. President Abraham Lincoln had 2 masks made during his lifetime. Contrary to popular belief, President Lincoln only had 2 life masks and no death mask was ever made. The first of Lincoln's 2 life masks was created by Illinois sculptor Leonard VOLK in early 1860, while the future president was campaigning in Chicago. VOLK asked Lincoln to pose for this life mask so it could be used in the creation of a larger bust sculpture for Lincoln. Because life masks are made from a mold, VOLK had to cover Lincoln's face with oil and wet plaster, something Lincoln called anything but agreeable. VOLK's mask is identified by the absence of Lincoln's future beard. The completed bust was delivered to Lincoln in Springfield a few months later. While there, VOLK also made a mold of the future president's hands. It was not until February 11, 1865, that Lincoln would permit a second and final life mask to be made. This time, it was made by well-known sculptor Clark Mills. Mills decided to cast the president's entire head instead of just his face like Leonard VOLK did. Lincoln, however, never lived long enough to see this mask completed, and sources document that Mills only casted 2 plaster masks from the original mold. In 1886, Theodore Mills, which was Clark Mills' son, presented one of the plaster masks to Lincoln's former secretary and Lincoln biographer John Hay. And in 1889, Theodore Mills presented the second mask to the Smithsonian Institution. Clark Mills' plaster masks are distinguished by the presence of Lincoln's beard that he first started growing in late 1860. Like many of Lincoln's wartime photographs, the mask shows evidence of Lincoln's rapid aging from stress and fatigue. According to Lincoln collector and artist Lloyd Ostendorf, the Mills family had a superb bronze mask made in the 1880s from a mold taken from their original plaster mask. For many years after the death of John Hay, his son Clarence retained possession of this bronze mask. Prior to his death in 1969, Clarence Hay told Ostendorf that his father had willed the bronze mask to the Library of Congress. Also in 1969, Lloyd Ostendorf was able to purchase the original Hay family plaster mask that had been in possession of John Hay's daughter, Alice, until her death in 1960. In 1973, Ostendorf announced that he would cast 15 bronze masks using the original plaster mask of the Hay family and offered them for sale at what he said a substantial price. After the 15 masks were cast, Ostendorf destroyed the mold he made, and the original Hay plaster mask was then sold after Ostendorf's death in 2000. Today, the 15 bronze Ostendorf masks are in the collections of renowned institutions and private collections. Below sits mask number 7, obtained from the estate of Lincoln historian and collector Kurt M. Kostler, who purchased mask number 7 in the 1970s from Lloyd Ostendorf himself. That concludes the presentation of our Lloyd Ostendorf Lincoln Life Mask, and we look forward to everyone visiting the museum in the near future and see this and many other fascinating objects firsthand on display.